The air was heavy with a sense of foreboding, as if the world itself held its breath. On September 1st, 1939, the quiet dawn over Poland was shattered by the roar of engines and the thunder of artillery. Across the border, German forces surged forward with ruthless precision, crossing into a nation that had dreamed of peace but was unprepared for the storm. In that instant, a fragile Europe tipped into darkness, and the world would never be the same again. Families awoke to the distant hum of airplanes slicing through the morning sky, and the first tremors of fear rippled through streets and villages. Soldiers, barely trained, faced the unimaginable, tanks rolling relentlessly toward them, the skies above alive with the buzz of Luftwaffe bombers. There was no warning grand enough for the lives that were about to change forever, no preparation for the chaos that would consume nations. This was not merely a military maneuver. It was a message, a declaration that the rules of the old world had been shattered. Borders were drawn in blood, and a fragile sense of morality was tested as never before. In homes across Europe, children clung to parents who whispered prayers for survival. Neighbors watched in disbelief as the familiar streets of their towns became theaters of war, and governments scrambled. Impotent against the tide that had been unleashed, the invasion of Poland was lightning fast, yet its consequences were thunderous. Within days, Britain and France declared war, and the delicate balance of power that had held since the Great War crumbled. What began as a regional incursion became the ignition spark of a conflict so vast, so consuming, it would engulf continents, destroy empires, and alter the very fabric of human morality. Millions would die, families would be torn apart. And ideologies that had simmered in the shadows would rise to the surface with terrifying force. History often tells us of battles and leaders, of strategies and treaties, but September 1st, 1939 was about more than politics. It was about the human soul under fire. The faces of ordinary men and women, frozen in fear or hardened by resolve, became the silent witnesses of a world unmade. Every bomb dropped, every city razed, every life lost etched itself into the collective memory of humanity, a reminder of the fragile veneer of civilization. And yet, even in that darkness, the human spirit flickered. Resistance movements would rise, courage would blossom in the unlikeliest of places, and the stories of bravery, love, and sacrifice would define an era. The world's moral compass had been challenged, bent under the weight of cruelty and ambition. Yet in the hearts of those who refused to surrender, hope endured. September 1st, 1939, was more than a date. It was the day when the world realized how quickly order could collapse, how swiftly innocence could be shattered. It was the day when the horizon of human experience expanded to include both unimaginable loss and unbreakable courage. It was the day that reminded humanity that our choices, our actions, and even our inactions can shape the course of history, sometimes with consequences far beyond our imagination, and as the sun set over a world suddenly at war, there was no turning back. The echoes of that day would ripple through generations, a testament to both the darkness and resilience inherent in mankind. Borders would be redrawn, powers would rise and fall, and the moral landscape of nations would be forever altered. One single invasion had ignited a chain reaction that reshaped the globe, leaving humanity to reckon with the cost of ambition, the fragility of peace, and the indomitable will to survive. September 1st, 1939, Germany's march into Poland did more than start a war. It unleashed a reckoning that would test the very essence of what it means to be human. And as we look back almost a century later, we are reminded that history is not a distant story. It is a living testament, a mirror reflecting the choices we make, the courage we summon, and the lessons we must never forget. Expanded version, 800 words. The world was quiet that morning, but the calm was an illusion. On September 1st, 1939, the first tremors of a catastrophe that would engulf the globe began as German tanks rolled across the Polish border. The people of Poland, waking in the soft light of dawn, could scarcely imagine the storm descending upon them. In cities and villages, men, women, and children braced themselves for an unimaginable reality, one in which the familiar rhythms of daily life would be replaced by the roar of guns and the scream of aircraft overhead. The invasion was precise and merciless. Blitzkrieg, the lightning war, was not a strategy of attrition but of shock, speed, and overwhelming force. German planes tore through the sky with devastating efficiency, while armored columns cut through the Polish countryside, crushing resistance and scattering those who dared oppose them. Soldiers, often young and untested, faced an enemy whose coordination, technology, and ruthlessness seemed almost unstoppable. Yet within the chaos, ordinary people displayed extraordinary resilience, hiding, fleeing, resisting in ways both small and monumental. The consequences of that single day were immediate and far-reaching. Britain and France, bound by treaty to Poland, declared war on Germany within days, marking the official beginning of a conflict that would engulf the world for 6 brutal years. Empires, alliances, and ideologies collided, redrawing the map of Europe and reshaping the global balance of power. It was not just a military confrontation, it was a test of human morality, courage, and endurance. In homes across Poland, families were torn apart. Parents whispered hurried prayers to calm terrified children. Neighbors watched powerless as their streets and towns transformed into battlegrounds. The familiar became alien, and the comforts of peace were replaced by the relentless reality of survival. Each life lost, each city bombed, each moment of fear and uncertainty became part of a narrative that would define the human experience for generations. September 1st, 1939, is often remembered in terms of strategy and politics, but its true significance lies in its human dimension. This was the day when the fragility of civilization was laid bare, when the veneer of order peeled away to reveal the chaos and brutality that lay beneath. Yet even amidst the devastation, stories of courage and resilience emerged. Ordinary citizens became heroes, small acts of defiance became symbols of hope, and communities found ways to survive, resist, and endure. The invasion of Poland did more than ignite a global conflict. It forced humanity to confront profound ethical dilemmas. Leaders, soldiers, and civilians alike were faced with choices that would test the limits of conscience and morality. The horrors that followed, occupation, oppression, and genocide, were direct consequences of that initial act of aggression. But the human spirit, even when battered, refused to be extinguished. Resistance movements, underground networks, and acts of solidarity emerged, proving that even in the darkest times, courage and hope could shine. History is not just a record of events. It is a reflection of the choices we make and the legacies we leave behind. September 1st, 1939, reminds us that a single decision, an invasion, an act of aggression, a refusal to uphold peace, can reverberate through time, altering borders, reshaping power, and challenging the moral fabric of humanity. It is a day that teaches us the weight of responsibility, the cost of ambition, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. As the sun set over a world suddenly engulfed in war, there was no returning to the life that had been. Nations, cities, and families were irrevocably changed. Borders were redrawn, powers rose and fell. Millions of lives were lost. Yet amid the suffering, there were sparks of resilience, flashes of bravery, and enduring lessons that continue to resonate nearly a century later. September 1st, 1939 is more than a historical date. It is a mirror reflecting the fragility of peace and the profound impact of human choice. It is a reminder that the world can change in an instant, that innocence can be shattered, and that courage can emerge where despair seems absolute. The day Germany invaded Poland did not just start a war. It ignited a reckoning that would shape the 20th century and beyond. Humanity would never again be the same, and the lessons of that day remain as urgent, as powerful, and as necessary as ever.